Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sadashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sadashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Chai Ho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Gita Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dhama Ki Jai. Navadvi Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Atama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. We're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 6th chapter, 30th verse. Is that right? Yes. Can't see. Mukato Vartata Brahma Purushaya Purushasya Purudvaha Yas Tunmukatatvad Varnanam Muko Bud Brahmano Guruhu Mukato Vartata Brahma Purushasya Kuradvaha Yastan Mukta Katvat Varanam Muko Bud Brahmano Guru Mukato Vartata Brahma Purushasya Kurudvaha Yastun Mukatvad Varanam Yastan Mukatvad Varanam Muko Bud Brahmano Guru Mukataha, from the mouth, responsibly, from the mouth. Avatarta, generated. Brahma, the Vedic wisdom. Purushasya, of the Virat Purusha, the gigantic form. Kuru Udvaha, O chief of the Kuru dynasty. Yaha, who are. To, due to. Unmakatvat, inclined to. Varnanam, of the orders of society. Mukyaha, the chief. Abud, so became. Brahmanaha, called the Brahmanas. Guruhu, the recognized teacher or spiritual master. O chief of the Kuru dynasty, the Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of the Virat, the gigantic form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmins. And they are the natural leaders and spiritual masters of all others of society. Repeat, O chief of the Guru dynasty, the Vedic wisdom became manifested from the mouth of the Virat, the gigantic form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmanas, and they are the natural teachers and spiritual masters of all the orders of society. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.13, the four orders of human society developed with the order of the body of the gigantic form. The bodily divisions are the mouth, arms, waist, and legs. Those who are situated on the mouth are called Brahmins. Those who are situated on the arms are called Kshatriyas. Those who are situated on the waist are called Vaishyas. And those who are situated on the legs are called Shudras. Everyone is situated in the body of the Supreme, in his gigantic Vishvarupa form. In terms of the four orders, therefore, no caste is to be considered degraded because of being situated on a particular part of the body. In our own bodies, we do not show any actual difference in our treatment towards the hands or legs. Each and every part of the body is important, although the mouth is the most important part of the bodily parts. If other parts are cut off from the body, the man can continue his life. But if the mouth is cut off, one cannot live. Therefore, this most important part of the body of the Lord is called the sitting place of the Brahmins, who are inclined to the Vedic wisdom. One who is not inclined to the Vedic wisdom, but to mundane affairs, cannot be called a Brahmin, even if he is born of a Brahmin family or father. To have a Brahmin father does not qualify one as a Brahmin. The main qualification of a Brahmin is to be inclined to the Vedic wisdom. The Vedas are situated on the mouth of the Lord, and therefore anyone who is inclined to the Vedic wisdom is certainly situated on the mouth of the Lord, and he is a Brahmin. This inclination towards Vedic wisdom is also not restricted to any particular caste or community. Anyone from any family and from any part of the world may become inclined to the Vedic wisdom, and that will qualify him as a real Brahmin. A real Brahmin is the natural teacher or spiritual master. Unless one has Vedic knowledge, one cannot become a spiritual master. The perfect knowledge of the Vedas is to know the Lord, the personality of Godhead. And that is the end of Vedic knowledge, or Vedanta. One who is situated in the impersonal Brahman and has no information of the Supreme Personality of Godhead may become a Brahmin, but he cannot become a spiritual master. It is said in the Padma Purana, Shat Karmo Nipuno Vipro Mantra Tarta Visharadaha. A Vaishnavo Guru Nasyat Vaishnavaha Svapacha Guruhu. An impersonalist can become a qualified Brahmin, but he cannot become a spiritual master unless and until he is promoted to the stage of a Vaishnava, or a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or a devotee of the Personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya, the great authority of Vedic wisdom in the modern age, stated, Kipra Vipra, Kiba Nyai, Shudra Keninai, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta, Se Guru Hai. A person may be a Brahmin or a Shudra or a sannyasi, but if he happens to be well versed in the science of Krishna, then he is fit to become a spiritual master. From Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 8.128. The qualification, then, of a spiritual master is not to be a qualified Brahmin, but to be well versed in the science of Krishna. One who is conversant with Vedic wisdom is a Brahmin. And only a Brahmin who is pure Vaishnava and knows all the intricacies of the science of Krishna can become a spiritual master. The verse again, O chief of the Kuru dynasty, Vedic wisdom became manifested through the mouth of the Virat, the gigantic form. Those who are inclined to this Vedic knowledge are called Brahmins, and they are the natural teachers and spiritual masters of all the orders of society. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gyanananjana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yad Kripa Tadaham Bande Shri Guru Dina Charane. The Virat form, or the universal form, is described earlier in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this form of Krishna is to help people to understand that there's a unity in the universe. Just like there's a unity within our own body, and as Prabhupada mentions, the hands, the mouth, the legs, the arms, the fingers, they're all treated equally. So there's an equal treatment of all different sectors of society. And they're all dependent upon one another, and they work together just like the body works together. The legs carry the body, the brain thinks about things for the body to do, the hands and arms do work, and the stomach is the source of energy. So these things are understood as the universal aspects of the form of Krishna, but they're also the universal aspects of the world in general, which is consisting of many universes. Prabhupada talks about how people from any walk of life can become Krishna conscious, not one who is born a Brahmin. This is the ruin of the caste system. Prabhupada uses the word earlier on as vitiated. I think it's from the first canto. Vitiated is an unusual word. The dictionary meaning is the thing that is vitiate is to spoil or ruin or partially spoil. So a lot of people believe that they are ignorant of that country, that faraway place known as India, because they think it's based upon a caste system, on a system that has different divisions of society. And Prabhupada once said that unless this is actually implemented in society in general, then my work will not be done. So there is a lot of work to be done. And there was a thing called the Varnashram College, which Prabhupada started. And some people are of the opinion that they are Brahmins or Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or Sudras at the moment, but that is not possible. One has to be trained to be a proper Vaishya, a proper Shudra, and a proper everything, Brahmin and Vaishnava. It's very common that a person who is born of a Brahmin family considers himself to be a Brahmin, but according to Prabhupada, that is not so. Well, a real Brahmin is one who understands the science of Krishna and the science of Veda. And Veda means knowledge, and Anta means the end, and Veda means the ultimate knowledge. So the caste system is something that is very unlike Krishna consciousness. And what endeared Prabhupada to his early disciples was that he was very open-minded. He didn't think a person had to be born a Brahmin, in a Brahmin family to be a Brahmin. And he didn't think that one had to be born in any particular country, of any age, of any sex, of any inclination, of any creed. But he can become, if he knows the science of Krishna, a devotee of Krishna. Now, there are many rules and regulations to follow in Krishna consciousness. Of the rules that are prominent, the ones that one has to forego, of no illicit sex, no gambling, no eating of meat, no intoxication, are fundamental. And if one sees the value in those things, one becomes a Brahmin. On occasion, on a very rare occasion, these truths, or these functions of the different castes are violated. And a prescribed duty is mentioned that one has a duty to do as a Shudra. One has to carry out services and serve all the other castes. As a Brahmin, one should be conversant with Vedic knowledge and not charge money for services that are rendered. It was a common thing in the past that a Brahmin would have a school, would have a group of children, and it would all be free of charge. it was a custom that families would give rice and grains and various foods and things to take care of people who taught rabbinical culture. But nowadays that is not so. And what Prabhupada said was that people in all walks of life can become Krishna conscious. And when he came to the West, when he came to the United States, he found that all people were very immersed in sinful activity and had no idea about what a Brahmin is or what a Kshatriya is or anything. And yet he pursued and he prevailed and made these people that were of very sinful pasts and dark pasts into rabbinical teachers and even spiritual masters. On occasion, these have been violated. And when they are violated, it's because they are doing what Krishna asked them to do. For example, he asked Yudhisthira to say during the Battle of Kurukshetra to Dronacharya that your son is dead. And that was a lie because his son wasn't dead. But Krishna had this in mind, that this was a way to weaken the strength of Dronacharya. And Yudhisthira paused or he hesitated to accept this because he said that I've never told a lie in my life. That's part of being a Brahmin. A Brahmin is always truthful. But in this case, he was asked to lie, and he very reluctantly obeyed Krishna. He did what Krishna said, even though it was against his principles. And there's another instance when the Kshatriyas have certain rules about fighting. For example, a true Kshatriya doesn't fight with someone who has no weapon. In fact, he has to supply a weapon to a person who is weaponless. And a person who is not on a chariot, who is a Kshatriya fighting on a chariot, who is without his chariot, is not to be attacked. So there was an instance in the battle about Karna. His chariot was destroyed and he was repairing it. And Krishna said, now is the time that you can go after him and you can exercise your greater strength. Not greater strength, but you can exercise his greater strength by attacking him. And Karna saw that Arjuna was attacking him, and he said to him, Arjuna, what are you doing? I'm not even fighting. I'm just repairing my chariot. But this was a time when Krishna said, Krishna violated the rules of Kshatriyism, that you don't fight someone who's without a weapon or without a chariot. But he said, this is the time that you can exercise this and kill him. And another instance was that several gopis came to Krishna in the dead of night. You may know this expression, the dead of night. It was actually a 1946 black and white film that came out in England. And it came out in 1946, although it was produced before, because the law in England was that during the World War II, there was no such thing. A horror movie could not be released, but it was released. It was called The Dead of Night. It was probably about zombies or something, and it became a popular expression. It stuck. The dead of night meant the wee small hours of the morning, like 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock. That's the dead of night, not what the movie was all about. But anyway, these gopis came to Krishna in what Prabhupada calls the dead of night and danced with him. And this, according to moral ethics and morality and ethics and the customs of India, is a very sinful activity for a young woman to leave her protection of her family, of her husband, of her father, and to go in the middle of the night to dance with a young boy. But because Krishna wanted this, because Krishna was the attractive feature, everything was done, even though it was sinful according to modern convention. Another thing was that Bali Maharaj, who was the head of the demonic race, rejected Shukracharya, his guru, and rejecting a guru is considered to be a very sinful activity. But he did it because Krishna had ordered him, had asked that he be granted that Bali asked that he be granted 3 steps of land, and or Vamana asked that he be granted 3 steps of land from Bali Maharaj, and Bali Maharaj reluctantly did it because he was a very small person. He was in the form of a dwarf, and first he covered the all the land, and then he covered the entire universe, and then he covered, and then Bali Maharaj asked him, well, what is there left? And he said, and Krishna said, there's nothing left. And then he said, well, then put your third step on my head. And he was converted from being a king of the demons to a very worthwhile person. He was given his own place in the universe. And then Prabhupada tells a story of how Sanatan, this is another instance of someone violating Vedic principles. Sanatan engaged in black marketry, even though he was a very highly advanced Saraswat Brahmin from birth. And he tells the story that he was put in prison because he had chucked a sikhi. He told the Nawab that he was ill, but when the Nawab went to see him, and he was the main man, he was like a prime minister among the Pathan dynasty, the Mohammedans. So he went to his house and found out that he was actually reciting along with his friends and talking about Srimad Bhagavatam and spiritual topics. So he arrested him and he put him in jail. And Sanatan was in prison, but because his brother and he had amount of money in gold coins, he decided to escape by bribing the jailer. And this is a very unusual thing to do because it's not done in Krishna consciousness. In fact, in Moscow, when I was there about 15 years ago, there was an attempt by some people to get good articles printed in the Moscow newspaper, and they did it by paying money, bribing the newspapers or the newspaper editors to write a good article. And the devotees resisted this. They never bribed anyone and they got good articles published in the Moscow Times, I think it was, without bribing anyone, because they were against the principle of bribing. But Sanatan Goswami, in order to escape, because he had a higher purpose in life, did give thousands of gold coins to the jailer, and they weren't enough. And so he gave him some more. And finally, he said that I was in the government, and I did many things to benefit the citizenry, and you're a member of the citizenry, and therefore I've done you a lot of favors, and you have to do me one favor. I'm asking this one favor for you to do, and that is to release me. And so he bribed him, and he said, that's good that you mentioned this. It's good that you did this because I was actually going to murder you. There was a lot of crime in that part of the world in those days, and jailers weren't free of that. So anyways, but he said, but my one concern, the jailer said, was that, well, what will I tell the Nawab or the ruler, that how did you escape? And that was his main concern. And so Sanatan Goswami said to him that, well, I'll tell you what you can tell him. And according to what Prabhupada wrote, he invented a story. The story was that he went out to the field. Sanatan went out into the field because it was allowed, even if one was a prisoner, to go out into the field to evacuate, to take care of nature. So he went out into the field, and the jailer accompanied him because they thought, well, it would be bad if someone escaped. So the story was that he jumped into the river all of a sudden, unannounced, while before he did any business, and he jumped into the river, and the river was flowing so quickly, there were so many waves that he was carried away, and the jailer couldn't find him, and that was the story of how he escaped, and that was what he told the Nawab, and the Nawab accepted his story as being true. It wasn't actually the truth, but anyway, it happened. And another thing happened when Krishna feigned hunger, that he was very hungry, and he asked Brahmins to give them some part of their offering, and they refused because they said, well, the offering hasn't been done yet, and we have to offer prayers, and we have to do it properly, so they didn't do it. And then Krishna said, well, then ask their wives if they can do it. So the wives said, okay, we'll do it. If Krishna wants, we'll do anything. And so he said, well, I just want the dust from my devotees' feet, and they gave him the dust of their feet. And this is also considered very sinful because people who gave the dust of their feet to the Lord were destined to go to hell. And their thinking was that hell would be nothing compared to displeasing the Lord. So they gave the Lord their dust of their feet. and they were doing it because Krishna wanted them to do it. So the moral is that there are many things that we have to follow, and that we do follow, such as being truthful and being honest and being faithful. There are many things that are defined in the Bhagavad Gita as religious, but on rare occasions those things can be violated because Krishna wants it done. Vishwanath Chakravarti describes that when Bhishma was attacking Arjuna, and he was doing this because he wanted Arjuna and Krishna to break his promise. He had a chivalrous relationship with Krishna, one of the indirect rasas. So Krishna tried to stop him, and because the mood was a very violent thing, there was the battle of Kurukshetra was going on. The driver of the chariot wasn't spared. He was also injured to stop the Arjuna's chariot. So Duryodhana and others in the Kuru army, especially Bhishma, were piercing the body of Krishna with arrows, and blood was coming. And Vishwanath Chakravarti explains how can this be that the Supreme Lord is firing arrows and injuring Krishna? And he explained that it's like when a lover gets a love bite from his or her lover, they feel some type of pleasure. So even though Krishna was getting struck with many arrows and blood was coming out of he felt pleasure in his, because he felt this rasa was being enacted, the rasa of chivalry, and so Arjuna was able to be successful. And actually, during the Battle of Kurukshetra, Krishna was the real winner, but he decided that the Pandavas would be the nominal winners of this, and Arjuna would do it. So he said that one of the things he says in Bhagavad Gita is that my devotee has never perished. So during the battle, he arranged for the Pandavas to be the victors, because they wanted the kingdom. But this is one of the exceptions that Krishna gave. And he quoted the saying that necessity knows no law. That he explained that this was in 1977, when he was very relaxed, but very ill, but very relaxed, and he could talk kind of informally with the devotees. And one of the things he said was that people didn't always obey all the things, and sometimes Krishna made exceptions. And one of the instances that happened along these lines was in World War II, or World War I, it was not for World War II, World War I. Several refugees from Belgium came to France. And some of you may have heard this story, but he said that one of his customers told him a lot of war stories. And when he was a chemist, Prabhupada had his own drug shop, and this Mr. McPherson was one of his customers. And the customer told him that many refugees from the Nazis' oppression came to France, and there was a commander named Foch, F-O-C-H. And he became very angry. He said, well, what am I going to do with all these refugees? There were mostly women and children, women and children. And so they were lined up, and they were shot dead with guns from different sides, because the commander of the French army didn't know what to do with them. So there's a saying that necessity knows no law, or there's no law in love and war. So this is war, and sometimes they fight at night, which is also against moral principles. A religious war is one in which there is no fighting at night. It's only during the day, and as soon as the sun sets, all fighting has to stop. And the warriors are friendly with each other. That's the Kshatriya spirit. They can eat together, they can sit together, they can talk in a friendly way. And as soon as the sun comes up, they're at war. It's life and death. That's the Kshatriya spirit. So these refugees and that exists. And he said it is known that in the mosques in India, it is a well-known fact that there are many weapons in the basements of mosques, because that's also a violation of religious principles. So necessity knows no law, and there's no love, and there's no no principles followed in love and war. So these are some of the reasons why it does happen. But in general, devotees are very pious and very religious and very respectful and very humble. These are exceptions, that Krishna makes these exceptions. And the exceptions can be made when Krishna directly orders the thing, which he did in the case of Yudhisthira and others. Krishna ordered and when he was fighting with Bhishma, he broke his promise not to take part in the war, and he used the chariot wheel as a chakra, that he was attacking Bhishma with a chakra. So these are exceptions to the rules. Anyway, if any I think we'll have to stop now. Any comments or questions about any of this or anything at all? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you. My question is just following different rules, to how much does it really please Krishna in this day and age? And maybe I give an example, like for a lady, wearing the hair in the, you hear different things, wearing your hair in the middle, wearing a bindi, eating with your right hand. How much does this all please Krishna?
How much does what?
It please Krishna to do this sort of, because it seems to be more of a traditional thing than a nowadays thing.
Well, Krishna is always pleased when we follow principles. I mean, when we take the vows of initiation, we have to vow to follow certain things, and there are many other things, like the way hair is worn, and there is red vermilion put in the hair. Once Prabhupada said that's a tradition. We don't have to ask a woman if her husband is in station, and we don't have to ask whether she is a normal lady or a prostitute. We can tell by the dress, the way the hair is worn. It's worn on the side, or it's parted in the middle, or it's somehow or other like that. Those things please Krishna because they're part of the Vedic tradition. But if they're not part of the Vedic tradition, like in the West, people don't follow everything, and in a lot of the West, Krishna is still pleased because his representative is still converting them to be Vaishnavas and Brahmins. So he's pleased when they start to follow more and more the rules, and that pleases Krishna. But Krishna is pleased even without them following the rules. And as Prabhupada said, the caste system is very important, that people have to act according to their prescribed duties. But if they don't, Krishna is still pleased. And Prabhupada said that he wanted everyone to follow the Varnashram system. So that's going to take some time, and maybe take 10 years or 50 years or 100 years before people know what those different Vaishyas, those different Varnas are. In fact, you cannot be a proper Varna in Canada, because in the Varnashram Dharma, you're supposed to wear a deer skin or bark, and in Canada, especially in northern Canada, it's so cold that you just can't survive if you dress like that. So that Varna doesn't even exist in the West. But Prabhupada is still pleased. There's many people in Canada who've become devotees and are becoming devotees still, even though they're not wearing bark and deer skin. Hare Krishna. Yes, this gentleman. You had your hand up.
Just turn it on.
Hare Krishna. My question is that it is to be believed that lying is in human nature. Then how someone can be Brahman and stay that way? Because lying is against Brahman principle. So what do we do in that state when you accidentally lie?
What was your question?
Because lying in nowadays age is a common thing, to say a lie.
Well, nowadays lying is common. In fact, there's one instance where Prabhupada says that lying is permissible for Vaishyas. So you can say, if you're trading to your customer, that for you I'm making no profit. Those are his exact words. For you I'm making no profit. But people who aren't Vaishyas, who are Shudras and Brahmins and Kshatriyas, they're telling lies all the time. In fact, industrial espionage is a very common thing. That Apple is spying on Google, and Google is spying on Facebook, and Facebook is spying on Twitter, and they're all telling lies. So lying is very common nowadays. And in this age, it is said that lying is a very common thing. It's not for devotees, it's not for Brahmins. Brahmins are supposed to be truthful. That's one of the qualities of Brahman. He's always telling the truth, even to the enemy. Even to his enemy, he's truthful. He tells them how much money he has, even though the man might be prepared to beat him up and steal his money. But this is Kali Yuga, so lying is a very common thing, and it's not good. And that's why the present age is considered a very degraded age.
I see. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Just on the subject of Krishna breaking the rules, I somehow managed to get into a conversation with a hardcore Christian once.
About what?
To a hardcore Christian about God, essentially. And when I brought this subject up, that Krishna, everything emanates from Krishna, from God, and even this propensity to sort of curb the rules, you find that quality in Krishna as well, and that made him quite distressed. So how do we process this idea of how can we trust God when there's this propensity to break the rules?
Well, lying is different from being diplomatic. It is said that a diplomat is a person who can tell you to go to hell and you look forward to the journey. But Prabhupada himself was diplomatic, and when we talk to Christians, if Christians say, "What do you think of Jesus?" or "Do you worship Jesus?" and we say yes, but we don't have a deity of Jesus. We don't worship him per se, like so many people do. But that's sort of a lie, but it's kind of diplomacy. It's like explaining to someone why we don't celebrate Christmas the same way, and why we don't glorify Jesus the same way. We glorify him, but we don't do it the same way they do it. So that's diplomacy. It's not lying, but it's diplomacy. And so we have to use our intelligence. And the way this is violated most commonly is people will take a statement or one of these instances and say that it's always true in all places at all times. And that's just intellectually dishonest. Because sometimes we have to be diplomatic. And sometimes in order to get a person to become Krishna conscious, we have to say things like, well, it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian or a Jew. You can become Christian. You can just chant Hare Krishna. So in a way, that's a diplomatic sort of lie, but it's a little white lie. But it's something that sometimes we have to say. And then after a person gets more accustomed to this way of life, we can be more truthful. So the idea is to be as truthful as we can, but in the beginning, it may not be possible always. So that's the way to look at it.
I just thought that was a good question, so I just want to ask a bit more on it. The gopis, in the middle of the night, they went to see Krishna. So that's a very unlawful thing for them to do, to leave their husbands and go and see Krishna. So maybe Maharaj, could you explain, because it was for Krishna, how do we see that it's for Krishna, that it's okay?
Well, Krishna is beyond morality. I mean, he is the most moral person, but at the same time, he's beyond morality. Mm-hmm. So when he's present, when he plays his flute and the gopis hear it, they become obsessed. and what their karma is, what their prescribed duty is to take care of their family, it just goes down the drain, temporarily anyway. Because Krishna is all attractive. That's one of his definitions of Krishna.
Well, maybe we could ask you then, in this day and age, if we, just go and serve Krishna and neglect our family, what's the difference there now?
Well, there's a big difference in when we worship Krishna and sing Krishna's name in the temple. But Krishna wants us to be responsible people, to not do it to ruin of our own selves, our own family, our own friends. Yes. And friendship is very important in spiritual life. And Prabhupada established ISKCON so that the devotees would become friends with one another. And it's even said in the 11th canto, Maitre Prope Kaka, one should in work at making friends with devotees. And one should worship the Supreme Lord. That's the verse. Ishvara Tade Dineshu one should worship the Supreme Lord and make friends with devotees. And the devotees, by coming together and having a friendly relationship, can inspire one another to become more Krishna conscious. And the same thing goes for family life. If one has children and the children are raised to be Krishna conscious, that's very beneficial. But if one rejects one's wife and one's children to worship Krishna, that's not a very sane proposal.
Thank you. That was an excellent answer. Thank you very much. You have a question? I don't know if it's on.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. So in your class you mentioned that it requires proper training to become trained up even as a Sudra. So my question was, do you get to choose what you want your Varna to be, or are you born with a certain nature?
Generally, people are born with a certain nature, but they can change that nature. You can be a Kshatriya and you can become a Brahmin. You can be a Brahmin and you can become a Sudra. Prabhupada tells a story about one Vaishya, not Prabhupada, but Giriraj said this in a lecture, that one Vaishya lost all his money. He was a very wealthy man and he lost all his money. And he went to a Brahmin to ask him how he could regain his wealth. And at this point in time, there was a plague in India. And the government was paying money to people who turned rats in, because the rats were considered to be the carriers of the bubonic plague, or one of the important carriers. So this man picked up the rat and turned it into government, got some money for it, and he used that money to buy oil. And he was pounding the streets calling out Krishna oil, which means draw oil. And because he was a born Kshatriya, he regained all his wealth gradually by picking up that dead rat. And then eventually he became a wealthy man again. So that is part of his instinctual nature. There are many people who are Vaishyas who can't even read any language. But they can make money like anything, because that's what their mentality is. So they have to be trained, and we have something. We're starting to develop something called Varnashram College, in which Kshatriyism is taught. There are people who are born Kshatriyas in that part of the world, but we aren't, and we have to be trained to be Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, and everything, Vanaprasthis. That's what the college is. It's a training ground for all these things. We can't. There are people that say today that I am a Kshatriya or I am a Brahmin, and it's a bit premature, in my opinion. So any others? I think our time is up. It's over, actually. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.